welcome to the Everything Saxophone Podcast, Carly Stock. It's so great to finally meet you.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
And no pun intended, but your debut single is called Finally, and we are definitely going to be talking about that in a minute. But I think it's going to be super important for people to know, who you are, where you came from. So even though I've read some of the stuff about you, I want the listeners to get to know you. So where are you from? When did you start getting involved with music? Not necessarily saxophone, but music in general.
I'm from Los Angeles, born and raised. I'm here right now. And I started music. I kind of grew up in a musical family. My parents had always been doing music, had always been a part of their life. My mom's a singer and my dad is a guitar player. And so when it came time to like start extracurriculars, my parents decided they were gonna try to put me in music. I did piano, I did violin. Those didn't really stick with me. Like we're talking like maybe like pretty young, like elementary school. And then fifth grade band was an option for the kids. And I told my parents I didn't want to do it because I didn't think that music was for me because I had already had tried two instruments, didn't really like it. And so I told my parents that I didn't want to do it, but my dad actually like pretty much made me do it. And I said, well, if I'm doing it, like I want to pick the instrument. So my mom took me to Sam Ash and I found a saxophone and that was kind of what I took to. And pretty quickly my parents realized that like I liked it and they got me private lessons and got me my own saxophone. It was a Busher Elkhart, Indiana from the 40s. My dad got it for like $200 off of eBay.
Wow.
And that was my horn for a while. And yeah, that's what I used. And then fast forward, I'm still taking private lessons. I go to the Colburn School in downtown LA. They have a community jazz program there, directed by Lee Card. And I started there in sixth grade. I was doing their combo program. And I just kept doing it, kept being involved with it. Fast forward to high school now. Now I'm doing the combo program as well as taking lessons with Lee Card, and I'm doing the big band there. So I'm very involved at Colburn. Along the way, I had other mentors. Amber Navran of Moonchild used to teach me clarinet and saxophone before Lee and stuff like that. So kind of all of that stuff. In high school, I was very involved with Colburn. That was kind of my primary music education going forward. And then I went on to college for music. I wasn't really sure if I was going to go to college for music, but I was really continuing with it, right? I was continuing with music throughout my whole life. And at Colburn, my assistant band director, Walter Simonson, told me to check out UNT. And I saw them perform. And I was like totally blown away. And since then, I was like, well, I have to go to UNT or I have to try to like get into this thing and do the music thing. And I ended up getting in and going on to UNT, playing in the 1 o'clock, doing, everything I could to be involved over there. And now I just graduated and I'm back in Los Angeles. So, yeah.
That's really cool. And I want to unpack a little bit of this because some people are not aware. So the Colburn, that's a prestigious organization, prestigious group. Can you talk about that? You said they have a community jazz program, so it's not necessarily a daytime school. They offer other types of things.
Yes, so Colburn Conservatory is it's a conservatory. It's a college conservatory, but it's actually only for classical music, is my understanding. It's just a classical program, and they have in around the year 2000, Lee Card came in and he was the chair of the jazz community school. And the community school was it was by audition only, and it was for students of varying levels to come and get a jazz education. And the younger groups, maybe you don't need to audition necessarily, but the top groups, they were winning downbeat awards. They were winning, they were going to the Monterey Jazz Festival. They were going to the Next Generation and then getting chosen to go to the Monterey Festival. Like it was a very incredible program filled with lots of incredible jazz musicians. At a very young age, and so that community school just started kind of snowballing, and I joined in 2011, somewhere around there. And by 2018, my band had won a downbeat award. The Colburn Jazz Workshop Big Band had won a downbeat award. Other students were winning spotlights, young arts, like everything. And so it still is a very prestigious program, and it's kind of a community school. So there were people from, or it is a community school. So there were people from, I'm from Redondo Beach. So there were people from Redondo Beach. There were people from the Valley. There were some people were driving up from San Diego. Like it was a very, people from all over. So I know people from all over kind of the LA, Metroplex area, just because of that. Cause there really isn't much like it. I don't think down here, like if you were going to do something like that, like that was it. Like that was what people were doing. So I felt very grateful to be part of all of that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And I know coming from New York, I mean, I'm going to say it, we've got a lot more resources than you guys do out here. Thinking about where my students could go, there's some really good things like Colburn, and then there's nothing, so you were in 2011, so you must have been pretty young.
Yeah, I started, it was the summer between 5th and 6th grade was when I started. And I started in the very bottom combo because that's where, the little kids start. And, so I started there. And by the end, I got into one of the top 3 combos. And then I was doing the big band, which was, that was a different roster every year. They rotated people. I ended up doing it for 4 years, 2 years on alto and then 2 years on Barry. So I was there for a while. Yeah.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, that's an awesome experience. I had one student go there, and there's also and it's not, I don't want to call it direct competition, but there is also the LACSA, the Los Angeles County High School for the Performing Arts. So here's where I'm curious about too, and I don't know if it's because of the distance thing, although I doubt it. Colburn, I think, is down the block or whatever. But what made you? Maybe it was the teachers. I'm not sure. But what was the reason for maybe not going to LACSA?
Yeah, well, there were actually a lot of people from LACSA at Colburn. They were doing both.
Wow.
So LACSA, the only reason is because I was in Redondo Beach and I was going to high school, like at my local high school, and all my friends were there and stuff like that. So I just didn't really see, I don't want to say I didn't see a need, but I think also like I wasn't totally sure that like I was gonna pursue music. Like I wasn't like at the start of my high school career. I knew I liked it and I knew I was into it, but I didn't really know that was like what I was gonna pursue as a career until like probably when I saw UNT, which was late in my junior year of high school. So that's definitely part of it. But I knew tons of people at LACSA, and a lot of them went to Colburn as well. So yeah.
That's cool. I didn't know that. And again, these are 2 very prestigious organizations in the Los Angeles area. For those people that are listening that are from a different area, or if you are listening from Los Angeles area, one thing I didn't realize is that you could get into Colburn in 5th, 6th grade, all that kind of thing. I thought it was more, late middle school, high school that, kids were going to that, because that's what I saw from one of my students. He would have to leave like around 3 o'clock or something like that to get downtown to go to Colburn.
Yep, that sounds very familiar. That's exactly what we would, like come 3:30 after school, like head down there because it's, only 12 miles, but it takes about an hour to get down there on a Tuesday night. So, yeah.
Traffic is epic here. There's just a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
For sure. So now I'm curious too. So Walter Simonson, who's very well known, by the way, but Walter Simonson said for you to check out UNT. Did you check out, like, for example, any other colleges like USC or Berkeley or anything like that?
Yeah, I absolutely did. The reason, well, Walter's biased. He's a UNT alumni. So if you didn't know that, but yeah, he's a UNT alumni. But they were performing at the Next Generation Jazz Festival, which is where Colburn was invited to play. So they were like the featured guest artist there. The 1 o'clock was. So that was convenient for him to say, "Hey, Carly, go check this out." So I did. I absolutely did check out other programs. It was kind of a spread. At the time, my mom wanted me to kind of stay as close to home as possible. Like there were a few outliers. So UNT was one. I didn't apply to the New York schools. It was just too far. I applied to Miami, but I got past the pre-screen, but just decided that wasn't kind of for me. And yeah, but mostly a lot of SoCal, like local California schools, Northridge, Long Beach, UCLA. Yeah, so it was a lot of local schools, but I definitely did check out USC also. So I did check out a lot of options, but UNT was ended up being not only like of course like the right fit for me. Like when I went there, like I felt like it was the right fit. I loved the 1 o'clock, like I loved the big band stuff. Like that's always kind of been my something that I've loved. So not only that, but it was also actually the most affordable option. I ended up getting a scholarship there that allowed me to get in-state tuition. So I was paying, rather than paying, in-state for California, I was actually going to be able to pay in-state for Texas, going to Texas. So, which is way cheaper, cost of living, cost of everything. So it was not only the best fit, but it was also the cheapest. So it was kind of a no-brainer at that point. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. And, USC is incredibly expensive. I know, like Northridge and Long Beach would be cheaper than USC for sure,
Yeah.
but that's great that you got that scholarship and was able to pursue that. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about UNT and the 1 o'clock band, because some people may not be familiar with it, and you have a couple of special things with relation to that. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the 1 o'clock lab band is it's been around since the 40s. It used to be the 2 o'clock lab band, and then later down the line it became the 1 o'clock. It used to be like when they rehearsed. So the 2 o'clock or the 1 o'clock is formerly the 2 o'clock because they used to rehearse at two. So confusing. It gets kind of muddled like back there, but it is essentially the top band at USC or at USC at UNT, the top lab band. They call them lab bands. When I first started at UNT, there were 9 lab bands. So the 1 o'clock through the 9 o'clock. By the time I graduated, there were only 7, plus a Latin jazz ensemble. So that's a Latin big band and a contemporary jazz ensemble as well. And so the 1 o'clock lab band is the only collegiate big band to ever be nominated for a Grammy, of which it's been nominated 7 times. Its first Grammy nom was in 1975 with Lab 75. All of the Lab Band albums are called Lab whatever year it is. So I was on Lab 22. That's what I was on. That came out earlier this year on all streaming platforms, and you can buy CDs of it and all that stuff. But yeah, Lab 75 was the very first one to get nominated for a Grammy, and that was I believe every track on that was written by Lyle Mays, who went on to win many Grammys. After that. And yeah, unfortunately, Lyle Mays passed away, I think 2 years ago now. But yeah, he just won a Grammy for his very last composition, Eberhard. So that was like the last thing he composed before he passed. But yeah, so there's a ton of history. It's very rich. It was UNT has the very first jazz program in the country. Actually, it started in 1946. So when I was there last year, we actually had the privilege of celebrating the 75th anniversary of the program. So we had people coming back all the way from the 1960s. We had decades bands. So we had a 60s band, a 70s band, 80s band, all performing, playing in one day, of all of the alumni that were asked to come play. And then though culminated in the current 1 o'clock performance. So it was very fun. It was a very fun weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only fun but historical. Now, I can't even imagine the alumni that came back.
Yeah.
That must have been, crazy. That must have been crazy for you.
Yes, absolutely. I was meeting, I met the very first woman or I'm sorry, I met the very first alto player in the 1 o'clock who was a woman in 1984, I believe, Tamara Danielson. I met like all kinds of people that I never thought I would kind of get to meet or see or anything like that. So it was very, very cool. Yeah, it was a 3 day long like celebration. We were all just hanging and getting to know each other and playing and it was awesome. Yeah.
No, for sure. And let's get into that too, because in the promotional materials that I read, it said you're the only female saxophonist to have earned a seat in the last 30 years.
Yes, that is true. And, I'm very happy about that, but unfortunately, that is a fact as well. But yeah, so Carolyn Kafer, people may know her. She played in, I believe it was 1989. No, I'm sorry, 1990 to 1992. She was in the 1 o'clock lab band, and she played second alto and then lead alto. And after that, there was nobody until me, who sat in the saxophone section for 3 semesters. So between 1992 or whatever that was, and 2022, it was just me in this, who was a woman in the saxophone section. Which, yeah, it was kind of an interesting thing. I was very involved with an organization at UNT called Jazz and Gender Equity Initiative, formerly Women in Jazz Initiative. I became the president of Jazz and Gender Equity Initiative this past year. So we were always talking about, what we can do to kind of remedy this issue, and also, of course, just create a safe space for those of us that are, kind of, I don't want to say the odd ones out, but in the minority, right, on campus. So, JGEI was a big part of like my, involvement at UNT. I was very involved with that all 5 years I was there. But a big part of that was we got a lot of chances to like speak to the alumni during the 75th about like our experience, or we had chances to do outreach, in public schools and things like that, as far as like motivating and inspiring new generations, and also as far as educating our current teachers and people who are already teaching and on the scene, like what they can do to kind of make it a more comfortable space. But going back to the 1 o'clock, there's actually only ever been 16 female instrumentalists ever in the whole 75 years of the recorded program. And 2 of those were literally, within the last 3 years, because it was me, as well as the very first female lead trumpet player ever, who was Renee McGee. And we actually entered the band at the same time in 2021. So prior to that, there were only 14 ever across all instruments. There has never been a female tenor saxophonist. There has never been a female, I believe, female guitar player, and a female bass player, I believe. Those are, have never been filled.
That's sad. That's really sad, especially in this day and age. I'm really glad that you were part of the gender equity, and also we'll go off of this in a second. Let's talk about this now. There's now a scholarship now, right? There's an endowed scholarship.
Yes, absolutely. And that was honestly a pipe dream of mine. I was very much like, I was very surprised that even what I was so grateful, because it kind of just and was very serendipitous. I was involved with JGEI for literally since I was a freshman, and I went to school at UNT for 5 years. So I was there for 5 years, and that was actually the very first year it started, was my freshman year. So I've literally seen it across all 5 of my years there. So I've seen it develop, I've seen it change, I've seen, different presidents have different ideas, different, all that stuff. But something that was really, really important to me was outreach and recruitment. I also worked in admissions at the College of Music at UNT. So I actually got to see the literal numbers of how many women there are applying, how many women of those women actually get in. And it's not a great number, it's really not a great number. And every year consistently, I worked there for 2 years. And so I saw 2 audition cycles, and it's very, it's pretty consistent. I, kind of had a unique perspective as far as the recruitment and the outreach, because my philosophy is if you're already in college, if you're in college and you've gotten that far, that's amazing, but it's about you and maybe 3 or 4 other people. So we need to go back, to high school, back to middle school, back to even elementary school, when people are picking their instruments, like we have so many band directors, and whether it's on purpose or subconscious or anything, we have so many band directors that are, pushing little girls to play the flute and pushing little girls to play the clarinet because they are more feminine or lighter to even just carry. Like, it might just be a physical thing too. But those instruments aren't typically jazz instruments, right? I mean, of course, doubling, but as far as main instruments you go, and then the trumpet, trombone, like that's even more masculine. Like people see that as masculine. So that's always been my philosophy. But so that was like a huge thing for me, was outreach, and then the issue of recruitment. And I had a mentor of mine who was actually the repair woman at UNT, Ann McMillan, and we would talk about gender equity all the time. She was very involved with JGEI. She was always asking me how she can help, all those things. And I used to hang out in the repair shop because my boyfriend worked there. So I would like eat my lunch in there, so we got to know each other really well. And I had mentioned to her that, JGI was struggling a little bit, and I don't really know who. I hope there's interest next year, because I'm really trying to kind of, I don't want to say revive this program, but maybe like resuscitate this program a little bit, because it was the interest was waning, and it was, at the end, it was just me, like as president. Like my other colleagues, Renee graduated, so she actually wasn't even there the second semester. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of different things. But I was just talking to her about how like I want to help so much, and I just feel very much like I can't, and we don't have money, and we don't have, I don't have the people to outreach. I don't have all this stuff. And she literally pulled me aside that day and she said, Carly, I just sold a bunch of real estate that I had, and I've been looking to put it back into the College of Music, and I want to do this. I want to help you, and I want to do an endowment and put down an endowment for JGEI. And I was like, holy shit, like this is amazing, and so we were able to instill a scholarship. It's called the Ann McMillan and Carly Stock. Oh my gosh, I don't want to mess it up. You have it in writing. The Ann McMillan and Carly Stock for Jazz and Gender Equity Initiative. I believe that's what it is. But we were able to start that. And essentially it grants a $1,000 scholarship to any member of JGEI. So you just have to be a member for 1 year. And it's any member within the jazz division and also within JGEI. So our hope is that it will go to women and non-binary and other minority groups, of course. It is chosen by a panel, so they have, it's at their discretion to kind of pick and everything like that. But we're very happy to do that. As I mentioned previously, the reason I was able to go to UNT was because I was granted a $1,000 scholarship, which then granted me in-state tuition. That's a huge thing at UNT. If you get any scholarship from anywhere, not only just the College of Music, anywhere from the greater university, anything like that, you are automatically granted in-state tuition. So with this scholarship, it is $1,000, of course, but it then gets rid of all of the other out-of-state costs, which a lot of the jazz program is out of state people. A lot of it, I would say the majority of it is people who are out of state. So if we can give it to a woman who is out of state, and that alleviates, you know, a huge chunk of their debt, and hopefully encourages them, and, you know, tells them that UNT wants them, and all that stuff. So I was very it was very I was surprised when that all kind of came to fruition and everything, because it was just so yeah, like serendipitous, I guess. So yeah.
That's great. And let me, for my own clarification, so let's say, you know, someone's listening to this podcast, you know, a female jazz player, and she's like, you know, she's maybe in high school and she's may consider UNT. The only thing though, she would have to be there already because she'd have to be a member of the group first. That's the only thing. So she'd have
Yeah.
to, okay.
Yes, and that was actually, there were two options with the scholarship. If we were to use it as like a pure recruitment tool, instead of like, this is like a retainment tool, because what we see as well is we see a lot of minorities getting to UNT, doing their first year, doing their first 2 years even, and dropping out. So that's essentially retainment. We're talking about retainment. We decided to go the retainment route because there's, unfortunately, I'll just be candid with you. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of barriers at a state school. If we were a private institution or a conservatory or something like that, there would be a lot less scholarship regulations, essentially. So there was a lot of logistics that prevented us from using it as a recruitment tool in the full extent that we kind of had hoped to do. But we do hope that this retainment tool is an encouraging factor as well. Just like I said, like if you can go to UNT and you go to UNT and you're granted this scholarship, that still will, it's renewable. So you can potentially have it for 3 years of your 4 years. So it would still alleviate a ton of financial burden, you know.
So let's say, you know, female, she gets in, right? And the first year, obviously she can't get the scholarship then, but she may be paying out of state fees, let's say. And then the second year, if she gets the scholarship, then that will erase the out of state fees.
For that year, and if she wants to renew, it is fully renewable. So for that year and then the 2 years to come after that. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's actually a great incentive for sure. And you know what I'm really curious about? Okay, so here's the thing that pains me, and I've had a lot of women on the podcast. I'm thinking about Virginia Mayhew, Laura Dreyer, Claire Daly, Mindy Abair, Grace Kelly, Camille Thurman, also Alexa Tarantino, Lauren Sevion. There's just so many great people. But what pains me is that the stuff you were talking about before with the band directors and choosing instruments, that's the stuff that I went through growing up. So I played trumpet. And so it was me and this other girl out of like 30 people that picked trumpet. And this was like in 1970, what, 8, something like that. I don't even remember. But that was the kind of talk that went down back then. It pains me to hear that some of that stuff still is said today. Now, I get it because I also taught public school. So, you know, you can't have a million saxophones and no clarinets. So, you know, you're talking about balance in the band, but and also talking about too, like if you do start on clarinet, you do get a better foundation in a certain regard. Clarinet's harder. People think it's easier. It's harder. It's hard to play clarinet.
No, it's harder. It is absolutely harder.
And if you start on clarinet and then play saxophone, that's an easier route. And a lot of people that I've interviewed have said the same thing. So I can get that. But to make that a person's choice based on their gender, that really bothers me. That's really such a shame.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because statistically, and I'm sure you know, but for the listeners here, but statistically, when you go into a middle school or even elementary school band program, you see that the numbers, like as far as, you know, what the ratio in the jazz band is, or even just band in general, it's very much 50-50 or close to it. And as you go up the ranks, especially in jazz, you see that number start to waiver and kind of favor male or male identifying people, which is just so interesting because yeah, and then by college it's just a huge drop off at that point. So it's been a slow gradual thing, and then you get to college, it's just crazy. At UNT there was approximately 50 saxophone players. I was one of two females in the jazz program, in the as a jazz saxophonist. Every year there was no more than two in any given year, and I was there for 5 years. There were zero trombones all of my 5 years, zero. There was two trumpets, two or three trumpets. I don't know if one of them was a jazz major, but she was kind of involved with the jazz stuff, over all of my 5 years. I don't think there were a few bass players. There were a couple guitarists and couple pianists, but we're talking, in all of 5 years, we're talking like less than 20 female instrumentalists that I've met from UNT, and we're talking about a program that's approximately 250 people, which is just insane. So yeah.
Yeah, and we're talking the 2020s here. We're not talking
Yeah.
we're not talking 1980, So
Yeah. Yeah.
that
I also want to add to that, because I think also I've had this discussion a lot, and people always ask me like, oh, do you think it's because it's Texas? And because just politically, like, do you think it's because it's Texas and maybe, people are averted to going there, or people are, just less receptive to stuff like that, which is a very valid question. And I kind of used to think that as well. I was like, oh, it's Texas, there's going to be a lot of white male dudes, in the band. No, you go look at other schools across the country. My friend, one of my best friends who just graduated from UNT, is going to USC. He's playing in the Thornton Jazz Orchestra. There is one black guy and zero women in the Thornton Jazz Orchestra as of last year. Like, that is terrible. Like, and that's Southern California. So I'm going to say no. It's not because it's Texas. It's because it's the nature of the field that we're in. So yeah.
Yeah, and I was gonna say let's talk about this, but in terms of perspective, in terms of changing things for the better, and I keep going back to like Camille Thurman, who from New York, and playing in big bands and stuff like that, and New York City schools and all that kind of thing. I think it all does boil down to attitudes. It does boil down to belief systems, but it also boils down to it goes back to the music schools who are training the music educators,
Yep.
And they're not going to change belief systems necessarily, but I think that there's a whole bunch of things that are going on here. Number one, music educators don't get enough jazz education. I know that.
Yep, absolutely. I will sorry, I want to let you finish, but at UNT, I was shocked. Jazz is not part of their music education degree at all. Zip, zero, nothing. And that is one of the most renowned music education certifications and programs. And I was shocked when I learned that. Zero requirements for jazz, which is crazy because a lot of them move on to teach it and they've never been doing it before, So anyway, yeah, go on.
No, I'm glad that you said that. I wasn't even aware of that. When I went to Queens College is one of the best music education schools in the country, and all over actually. And they're nothing. And this is a long time ago. I was there. Jimmy Heath did start a jazz program. That was awesome.
Yeah,
he was so great. But that was on the master's level, but that didn't seep down into the education track, and the fact of the matter is that colleges that don't offer some kind of education, some kind of training, you're not setting up your graduates for success, because everybody, well, I can't say everybody, but many schools, many high schools have jazz band. Many middle schools have jazz bands. I had an elementary school. I made sure I made a jazz band there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It gets the kids going through the day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, that's just a whole, another can of worms because we have these people who aren't qualified, and then who maybe, it's not necessarily their fault. It's just
No.
the education system didn't educate them, and maybe they want to bring jazz to their program, but they just don't even know how to, because they weren't educated themselves. So yeah, it's cyclical, so
Yeah,
yeah.
and this is just, and actually, I'm just going to plant the seed, but this can be food for thought for you, or anybody else that's listening, but especially with your background with the initiative, right? And what you saw, and, in particular at UNT and stuff like that. I think that a few things need to happen. Number one, colleges in terms of admissions need to be a little bit more, I don't want to, well, I'll use the word mindful, but also aware that of the numbers and stuff like that, and be more put more effort into recruitment. Retainment's another story, but recruitment of various all types of people when it comes to getting people into their programs and stuff like that. But I've spoken about this with a number of people on this show, in terms of a lot of people are, college professors and that kind of thing, and they're working really hard to try to make things more equitable and all that kind of thing. But just trying, colleges can be really tough in terms of changing attitudes, of the administration and stuff like that. And many people feel, I'm taking enough classes, I've got to take this too. The thing though is that if you want to have success, moving forward, it's really, really imperative, because that's the thing that's going to make you stand out as a music educator. What I did, I took summer courses. So I went to Hart School of Music. I took so many courses from there. I went to um, Villanova. I took some courses from there. I went to Connecticut State University. I took some courses from there over the summer, just to get the stuff that I was not getting from
Yeah.
Queens College. So I'm just planting the seeds, for you and others to think about, as you move forward. Because one of the things I was going to ask you, and I guess you can't be involved anymore in that initiative because you graduated, right?
Yes, exactly. Essentially, I've handed it over, and of course, I'm here to talk to and be a resource and all that stuff. But yeah, it is now it's part of the university, so it was a student organization. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's any possibilities of some kind of alumni group that could be formed that could
Yeah.
could help to continue, with what you've done, or what the current people want to do, and offer support and direction, and also influence as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. I I'm definitely curious to look into that now because we do have, of course, records of like all our rosters and like all those things. So it would be curious, or I would be curious to kind of maybe reach out and check in with some of our previous members and see where they are at, like what they're doing and all that stuff. And of course, I know some of them already, but just a definitive list, would be great. But I think I'm going to do that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I'm also curious too. So how did it, people may think, all right, so big deal. So she's just one or two females. But did that have any effect, you going through school? Did that have any influence on how your training and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I can't, that's like who I am and like how people perceive me, like absolutely. I my biggest thing just throughout was, I mean, I think just everybody, we go to this program, and in my eyes, like when I got there as a freshman, it's like a legendary program, and it's very much, this is what you do, and like you rise in the ranks and like go, and I just wanted to be treated like everybody else. Like I never ever wanted to be, either, there's two ways that it could go. Like people could be less harsh on me, people could be more harsh on me, people could talk, say bad thing. Oh, she's a girl, she can't play, like whatever it is, like just because they don't know who, what I'm like or who I am or like how, all that stuff. So absolutely, it was definitely the biggest emotional toll I think it took on me was the fact that I never always believed that I like deserved it. Like I was always raising, or sorry, I keep saying raising, rising. I was always like rising through the ranks. When I got there, I actually didn't make a lab band, and then I made it into the 9 o'clock, and I literally like clawed my way through almost every lab band until I got all the way to the 1 o'clock. So it was not an easy road at all, but I kept moving up. It was consistent that I kept moving up every semester, every 2 semesters or what it was. And there was a point where, especially when I got into like the top three lab bands, so the 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock, I was just like, why am I here? Like why am I here? I must be here for a diversity token. Like that's why I'm here. They're an education, they're a university, and they're a state school, and they need a diversity token, and I'm it. Like, cause I was literally like the only woman in the band, pretty much every time. So, that was the biggest thing for me. And the 1 o'clock band director, Alan Baylock, is a huge mentor of mine. He was very involved with Jazz and Gender Equity Initiative. He actually just started a women's publishing company. He for jazz, specifically jazz. Alan Baylock is a award-winning composer, arranger, all that stuff. But he wanted to give a platform to women, so he partnered with Annie Booth, who is another arranger out of Colorado. And they literally formed this company called Brava Jazz, just launched in March this year on Women's History Day. It's a platform essentially for female artists and non-binary and all that stuff, minorities in jazz, for them to present and get heard and get a place for people to buy their charts, a place for all that stuff. So he's a huge advocate for women's equity and equality in jazz. And me knowing that, like I was getting in the 1 o'clock, and I was always like, oh sheesh, like it's because I was the only girl or one of two girls, it's like, man, is he putting me in this band because he just needs a girl? Like is that why he's doing that? And I remember always at JG, all the time I would be emphasizing, I only want to be in any band, I don't care whose band it is, in any band if I deserve it. If I was to find out that I was in a band because of the way I looked or because of the way I didn't look or whatever, I would be just like totally devastated and heartbroken. And so that was always my biggest thing. And so, obviously that wasn't the case at UNT, and I'm very happy that that wasn't the case, but doesn't mean I didn't feel like it was, for forever, pretty much for my whole schooling there. But it was just that was the biggest emotional effect, I think. Yeah.
So in other words, what you're saying is that, because there were so few females there, you felt that was the underlying thought pattern that you had. Whereas if there were more females there, it just wouldn't, probably wouldn't have crossed your mind.
No, absolutely not. And yeah, and I always felt like, everybody has imposter syndrome. Like I think most musicians have imposter syndrome, but it just gets amplified, like with the fact where it's, where you're the only one that looks like you, and you don't know why. You already have imposter syndrome. It's like, oh man, I don't deserve to be in the 2 o'clock. Like I don't, whatever it is. But then you compound the fact that you're a woman, and it's like all eyes are on you too. So it's because you whether you want to be or not, like you're noticed because you are the only one. Like you are sticking out. Like so people are gonna have all eyes on you at all times, pretty much. So you almost have to like perform at a higher degree, like if that makes sense. Like you have to be better to be seen as on the same level, like and that's, whether that's true or not, that's just how I felt. Like and I especially I don't want to call UNT cutthroat. I think it used to maybe be from kind of stuff that I've heard, but it was I actually had a great experience at UNT. It was a very supportive place for me and all that stuff. But even in that environment, I was having these thoughts. So, and that was probably the best possible environment I could have been in. So, I don't know what's going on at other schools or anything, but I can hope that it's not worse than that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned, and as a woman, I understand this too. We have to be way at the top of our game, in order to be perceived as, equal, so to speak. How did that affect your practice routine? What types of things were you practicing?
Yeah, I was practicing all the time. I mean, not that other people weren't. There were a lot of people. I had practice buddies like pretty much all through college. My boyfriend's also a saxophonist, so we literally were in the same program. We would go practice the same stuff like at the same time. So that was really helpful, and but people did that anyway. But I would practice, there were many Friday, Saturday nights where it was like, nope, we're practicing tonight until 11 o'clock midnight. Like that's what we're doing, and we're not doing anything else. That's what we're doing. My freshman year, I would say my practice became like less as I went through the program, but not to like not as like a bad thing. But when I got to UNT, like I said, like I didn't make a lab band, and that was like heartbreaking. Of course, like you're a freshman, you just want your first day of school to go well, like you want to make a band, like you want to, all that stuff. So I didn't make a lab band, so that was the jazz stuff. And we also have to do classical as freshmen and sophomores. So, and I had zero classical training. I was never classically trained in school. I played in the concert band, but as far as like classical repertoire and like classical style of saxophone playing, I had zero experience. So I would say my freshman year, I was practicing anywhere from like 5 to 6 hours a day, because a lot of that, like half of that would be classical and the other half would be jazz, because we were taking the classical courses and the jazz courses at the same time. So it was a lot. And this last year or two, I would probably say like 3 to 4 hours a day was a big thing for me. As I developed, I also had to start practicing my doubles pretty seriously. So I would be practicing my doubles for maybe an hour, like half hour clarinet, half hour flute, like what have you, and then 2 to 3 hours on saxophone after that. But as you go through the program, you also get gig opportunities. So when you're a freshman, you don't have any gigs really. Even a sophomore and even some juniors, don't have gigs. Which is fine. Like it just means you need to go practice, right? But so that kind of equalizes, I guess. So the practicing was up here and it kind of came down here, but my gigs went kind of up. So I was getting like real world experience, and doing other things. Of course, I was doing JGEI, I was doing my admissions job and things like that. So after that initial 2 years of like really practicing a lot, and even after that too, but really just getting my shit together like those first 2 years. So it was everything. I was practicing everything. I was practicing tone, technique, classical, jazz, like doubles, everything. It was a mix of it. And of course sight reading was a huge thing at UNT. So yeah, all of that stuff. Yeah.
It's that's really interesting, and I'm the thing that keeps coming up in my head. Did you had to change your setup for classical?
Yeah, absolutely. And my teacher was a teaching fellow. Her name was Sarah Dunbar. She was a doctoral student, and I basically went into my first lesson and I said, Sarah, I have zero classical experience. And by the end of the semester, you have a jury with classical rep and like all this stuff, so you kind of have to get it together pretty quickly. And she was like, okay, by next week. That she didn't even like, she wasn't even like, go try mouthpiece. She was like, go buy this mouthpiece. Like, this is the mouthpiece you're getting. Like, that, just get it and like we'll work with it. So, I got a Eugene Rousseau mouthpiece and a ligature, I think it was a BG, I don't remember, or a Van Doren, I don't remember. And that's what I work with, and blue box reeds, and that's what I worked with for 2 years, and beyond. That's my classical setup. So
Got it. Okay, so you have that classical setup, and then when you got to UNT, did you have to change your jazz setup, or did you stick with what you had?
well, I actually didn't. I didn't change. I actually played on the same mouthpiece for over 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's not the current one that I'm using. I got the RS it was actually last summer, so about a year ago. I've been playing on that one. But previous to that, I was playing on a hard rubber Meyer 5 with a small chamber.
Wow.
And you can imagine how that's like laser beam. Like, and I was like a sixth grader playing on that thing, but I liked it and I got used to it. Of course, it was very finicky with the intonation and stuff. I actually think that kind of helped me in the long run, because if I can make that play in tune, I can kind of make anything play in tune. So I kind of made it harder on myself for a while, but it ended up paying off, I think. But that's the sound I love. I love like the very like bright, like focus, like that. That's what I love. So I'm sure that's where that all comes from too, is that mouthpiece. So, or that like concept comes from, is just that I was playing on the mouthpiece. So
That's awesome. And in terms of reeds, were you using the same reeds for classical, like the blue box, or
no,
something else?
no, I was using Van Doren ZZs for a long time, and then I was using another Van Doren. I don't remember which one. But now I still do Van Doren blue box on my clarinet and then on classical. But right now I'm using Hemkeys. I love Hemkeys. Professor Lely was my professor at UNT, and he is a D'Addario artist, and uses Hemkeys, and so he just had like boxes and boxes of them, and he was like, here, try this, and I just like loved it. So I've been using Hemkeys for the last like 3 years now. Yeah.
For your jazz setup, you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
Interesting. Do you do so you've graduated, right? So you're gigging around town, all that kind of thing. Are you taking any kind of classical gigs, or is it just mostly jazz pop?
I'm not a huge classical person. I appreciate it. I understand why we were supposed to learn it. I can teach it. I can play it if I needed to, give me about an hour. Like I kind of gotta get back into that kind of thing. But it's not exactly my forte or exactly my where my heart is. But of course, I think everybody should know the Fairling book, and everybody should know, you should know about Eugene Rousseau. You should have studied some of his stuff, and you should, have learned at least some classical rep, so that you can at least have that under your belt and know the style and that genre and everything. So, but yeah, no, I haven't even really seen any, not that I would even be maybe interested in taking it, but yeah, I not exactly my forte. So
Yeah, no pun intended.
yeah, no pun intended.
Well, now let me ask you. So you're done with your bachelor's for college. What are you doing? We want to talk about your single, right? So
Yeah.
what are you doing now? And then we're going to talk about future plans and stuff, whether you intend to get your master's and stuff like that.
Yeah. So right now, I have this was kind of my like working vacation month, like a little bit. I just got back at the end of May, so I've been here, and just essentially just trying to get back into the scene, and just see what's been going on. I've been going to jams. I've been, just practicing and all that stuff. I actually took an audition a couple weeks ago now for that band that I ended up getting, which was Fat Cat Swinger, and they're like LA's favorite little or Hollywood's favorite little big band is like kind of their tagline. But I'm very excited to say that I'll be going on tour with them at the end of August all the way through beginning of October. I just played my first gig with them last week, which was super fun. We played in Apple Valley, which is where they originated. So it was like, people love. They've been around for, this is 21 years. They've been around for 21 years. So yeah, so I was very, I just took the audition, like I had no idea, wasn't really counting on anything, and I ended up getting it, and I was very happy about all that. So my kind of plans and things have changed since. And then in addition, so of course, gigging with them, and then just gigging in general, just, cocktail hour, like everything. But I also teach at a local music lessons or music studio called Coast Music Conservatory. That's in Manhattan Beach. So I have some students there right now, and I teach all woodwinds, or well, not double reeds, but flute, alto, or flute, saxophone, and clarinet, and some recorder too. So
that keeps your flute and clarinet chops up.
Oh yes, and I've been practicing my flute every day. Clarinet, I can't say the same for, but flute, I've grown to love the flute. So I've been doing flute for about like 45 minutes, hour every day, and then go to the saxophone. So, but I love the flute. So
and I'm sure you need, you have to double in that little big band, so to speak, as well, right?
So currently, no, the tenor has all of the doubles currently.
Wow.
Kind of a funny story. The tenor is also the arranger for the band. So he wrote himself all of the hard stuff because he knew the hard stuff, but like he knew he could play the flute and he knew he could play the clarinet. So he was like, well, I don't know whoever's playing, like whatever's happening, because he's been there for like 10 years. So there have been several other saxophone players. He's like, I know I can do this, so I'm just gonna write it for myself, and I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon. So I'm gonna take all the doubles. But he did tell me that next year in some of their new arrangements and their rewrites and stuff, he's gonna start moving the doubles elsewhere. So I'm anticipating getting some flute stuff and everything, and I'm excited about that. That'll be fun. So.
All right, that's cool. So now let me ask you this question. So you get back from college, right? So the first thing that you do, to find gigs, you mentioned you went to some jams and stuff like that, right? So which were some of the jams that you went to?
Yeah, so I went to in Long Beach. I went to the Old Dubliner, which is a pub. That one doesn't happen super often, but it is around. Gerald Clayton has his jam at Sam First by LAX Airport. That's been happening now since I think the winter time, or maybe even last summer. So that's Gerald Clayton and Logan Richardson. That's who hosts that. And then what else have I been going to? I haven't been to the Mint Jam in the last month, but I've been there before. The York is also a place that I've been going to. It's kind of inland. I don't remember what city, but I'm trying to think what else.
I think there's Eagle Rock or something like that. York.
Yeah, I actually haven't been to Eagle Rock. I haven't checked that one out. We've been doing some like just jams out of my friends' garages and stuff like that too. But that's not, I'm not meeting people. We're just doing our sessions. But yeah, so those are kind of the ones that I try to go to. I'm trying to think. There's one more, and it's like slipping my mind. I can't remember, but yeah, I try to diversify. I try not to go to like the same one every week. I try to go to different ones. So, yeah.
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking too is because for people and a lot of people have moved, since the pandemic and stuff like that, and so I'm asking for the reason of, people may be looking to get more opportunities and stuff like that. So let's dive into this topic for a little bit more. So you get back from Texas, right? You're coming home. You got to get reestablished in the scene. So you're finding out these jams. I guess how did you find out about some of these jams? What did you do to do that?
Yeah, so a lot of them had already been going on, and growing up here, you just have friends that do it, and the Rhythm Room. The Rhythm Room was the last one that I was trying to remember. So you have friends and going through a network, not only the UNT network, and there's I know 5 saxophonists from the LA area that went to UNT. So it's like that's already easy. And then of course going to Colburn, I have that network of people because I still am in touch with a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them. So not only that, but they invite me, hey Carly, I'm playing at the Rhythm Room, like there's an open jam after, like come hang out. It's like, okay, cool, like great. Um so stuff like that. I don't want to say like, that's the only way to find out, but that is like very convenient way and a nice way for me that I had these pre-existing connections. But I mean, you can find stuff like from gigs that you have, you just talking to everyone and meeting with everyone, like I think is super important. Even going to like Long Beach, we were talking about Long Beach Woodwinds earlier. Long Beach Woodwinds, like those guys are all players, like all of them, like they play in some capacity. Just sit there while they're working on your horn or while you're doing whatever, just talk to them, see what's going on, like hey, where are the gigs at, where are the jams at, like what's the scene like right now, I just moved back, like stuff like that. So I think just using every resource you can, like even if you don't need a repair, like just go talk to them. Like if you really truly don't know anybody, just go to music stores, go to that stuff, because I've met people from even Long Beach Woodwind. It's like, oh, so and so. It's like, oh, I know. And then we talk about that. Yeah.
That's a great tip, though, to talk to your repair person.
Yeah.
Especially if they're a player. So like, I get my horns. I go to Long Beach Woodwinds to get my horns repaired. Brian and Edgar and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I saw Brian at NAMM, and actually, he was trying out the new Eastman, the new Eastman 52nd Street model tenor. So good.
Oh, really? Yeah. I've tried the alto. The alto's good. The alto's really good.
Yeah. So he was trying that out. We filmed him. We put it up on the podcast and stuff like that. So, that's always very helpful. That's a great tip for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you're getting yourself established. You've gone to some jams, making more connections and stuff like that. You found out about the audition probably from somebody. It's not necessarily publicized.
Yeah, it was a friend's Instagram actually. She had just posted about it, and I was like, well, I have some time. Like, I'll send in an audition. One last thing I want to add to that is just my mentors as well. I mentioned Walter Simonson, Lee Seacard. Like, I've totally been in touch with them, and even my old high school band director and some other old lessons teachers and things like that. Like, I essentially just sent them that's how I got the gig at Coast Music. Is I just sent them an email and I said, hey, I'm moving back home and I am looking for work, like I have all this teaching experience, and I don't know if you're looking for a saxophone instructor, but I am local and I would love to help out. And they literally were like, yes, we need someone, like we would love to have you. So just stuff like that. Old mentor, like that was a program that I went to in 7th and 8th grade, and I kind of did some other things with them here and there, but just stuff like that. And it's like now I have that job, and that's gonna be, it's a 10-minute drive from my house, like super convenient, and I teach kids there. So yeah.
And it's all about the importance of connections and maintaining those connections, and not burning bridges or anything like that. And just as an aside too, again, people don't quite understand this. They think Los Angeles is this big city. It's not that. It's like a 4,000 square foot mile wide area where people are playing gigs anywhere in there. And you have to, it's a gig is like an all day event, unless you could plan if you're doing a double type of thing where one is close to the other, because traffic there's no rush hour. Like there's no time for rush hour. It's all the time.
Yeah, it is all the time. Yep. Yep. It used to be like, I feel like even after COVID, like it's just gotten even worse. I feel like, I don't know, maybe I just am like, I haven't been here for a while, so I was like forgetting, but I used to feel like rush hour was like 3 p.m. to like 7:30-ish. And now it's like I'll leave at 1 p.m. and it's like to go to Long Beach for whatever, and oh my gosh, it's so now it's just like all the time.
Got a lot of listening in, as you're sitting in the car, and traffic and stuff like that. Now, let me ask you, so you had your practice routines and all that kind of thing in college. How has that changed for you now? You're home right? You don't have the, the structure of college. You're having to create your own structure. How has that changed? How much are you practicing? What are you working on?
Yeah, it's definitely an adjustment. It's interesting because yeah, now it's like we're just free, like to do whatever it is we want to do. Right now I'm trying. I had a pretty decent structure, and then I was really focusing on that audition. So I'm just kind of getting back into my routine again, and I'm reevaluating it. And then again, I'm leaving on Saturday to go. I'm teaching at the UNT combo camp, and then I'm counseling at Stanford Jazz Workshop. So I'll be gone for a full 4 weeks. So that's gonna kind of throw a wrench in some things too. But right now I'm taking the blues through L12. And that's something that I've done before. Like I'm just trying to delve deeper into it. I don't want to like just get by on a concert A blues. Like I want to like play on a concert A blues, like before it was like, okay, how can we get by on this? So if it gets called, like I won't, fold. Now it's like, I want to really be able to play like over this stuff. So I'm really trying to delve deeper into that. I've been taking, the first two choruses of Jackie McLean's Blues In through L12, and then I've been trying to do a key a week. That's kind of been upended a little bit, but I've been trying to do like a key a week, and the transcription itself isn't like super challenging or anything, but it has a lot of good vocab and some bebop stuff, some bluesy stuff, so kind of good stuff like that. But that's what I've been doing. I've gotten like 5 keys done so far, so I'm just making my way around the cycle of fourths. And then I've been working a lot on just bebop in general is always something I'm trying to work on. So I've been trying to work my way through the Omnibook. Like, of course I've done that too, but again, delving in a little deeper, doing, using it as not only sight reading practice, but like really learning these solos like at a high level, and using the Omnibook as a tool, not necessarily as a end all be all, but as a tool to kind of learn that stuff. So I've been doing that. I have been working on tempos as well. I'm trying to push just my tempo, my capacity to play fast, because has never been easy. Well, it's not easy for anyone, but I think it's been a deficit of me. Like I haven't really pushed myself there as much as I should have. So yeah, lots of technical things more so, and like harmony thing, like beboppy, like technical stuff like that, like changes. That's been most of my practice. My tone, I have my tone warm up, but that's not like a practice thing. It's more of just a retainment thing, like I just do it every day, and it makes me feel good and ready to practice. And I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, that's what I'm working on. I try to do a lick in all 12 every day too, so that's again like just getting comfortable in all 12 and stuff like that. So yeah.
And so, when it comes to this as well, like, talking like a lot of technical things, what kind of advice would you give to people? Let's talk like different levels, right? So, you're teaching kids, you're physically teaching kids and that kind of thing. But let's say we have people that are beginner improvisers that are listeners. We have people that are like, let's say, intermediate level, people that are, semi-pros, they're playing in community bands and stuff like that. That would be like the majority listeners, and then you have the pros and stuff like that. So can you give like a practice tip, for each like level where, let's see, how do I want to word this? Some kind of practicing tip to help with improvisation, an improvisation practice tip for each level.
Yeah, I can give you an overarching one that applies to all levels, and then I can also go separate if you want me to. But the biggest thing that I just have to say is just starting something. Like if you have a plan to do this thing in all 12, or do that, like the literal hardest thing is just starting it, because it is so daunting. Because 12 keys a lot. Like that's a lot of of stuff to work on. We're not like a guitar player, just move down a fret. Like it's a lot of stuff to like work out. So my biggest thing is I'm huge on like timers or like time limits. So if the way I combat, yeah, just like starting, like I mentioned with the blues that I'm taking through the keys right now, I've set my time span as like a key a week. Okay, so but then within that, I don't just like shed it for 4 hours a day. Like I just say, okay, I'm gonna spend 30 minutes to an hour every day for a week on this, and by the end of the week, like I've kind of set that time frame, but by the end of the week I'm confident that like I would have gotten a lot more done and a lot better. And so that's kind of my advice for any age group, like whatever you're working on. Like if it's daunting, like just start small and do it every day too. Like if you're working on, another thing that I'm working on is the dominant cycle, so just taking, like essentially the bridge of rhythm changes just through every key, like essentially. If you just shed that for 20 minutes a day and you realize that you don't get much further than B7, just spend that 20 minutes on B7. Like that's gonna do you way more good than running through the whole all 12 and like, folding, or that. Just spend all the 20, and then once you finally feel good about B7, like move on to E, move on to A, like all that stuff. So that's my biggest advice for anyone at any level, because I run into that a lot teaching, and I also run into that a lot like with myself. Like I just have to kind of stop and take a step back. And again, that word, I'm talking about bebop and like changes and stuff like that, but it can be applied to anything. Like if you're a beginner, if you haven't, learned your G major scale, start there. Like start there. That's where you start, and then move on to the next thing. After that, start improvising with your G major scale. No, you played a C sharp. Let's go back. Like, let's not play the C sharp. Like, get that until you can play all day over G major, and just play and never hit a wrong note, and then keep going from there, like whatever that is. So that's my biggest thing.
I think that's great advice. Absolutely great advice for sure. And it's the idea that, you don't want to be a jack of all trades, master of none. I talk to my students all the time, inch wide, mile deep. And that's exactly what you just said for the most part. So now this is awesome. So now let's dive into your world of composing, right? Yeah. So when did you start writing your own music, and talk about how finally, no pun intended, but how finally came out?
Yeah. It was a lot of work. It was like anyone thinking about releasing music and doing that thing, whatever time you think it's going to take, it is going to take a lot longer than that. So I started, I had never really been like super interested in writing. I always kind of saw myself as a player. At UNT, we have to take arranging classes, so there's no way around it. You have to do 2 semesters of arranging, where like you literally have to write a big band chart, like that's your final. So it got pretty intense pretty quickly. And so I did have a little bit of experience, but it wasn't anything I was super, I don't want to say I wasn't proud of it, but I wouldn't like necessarily bring that chart to a rehearsal, like it was just it was a thing where I learned a lot, and it needs some work beyond that. So I didn't really like compose a ton. The reason I took 5 years at UNT was because I had actually pretty much finished my jazz degree, spare my senior recital, in the like typical 4 years, but I heard that they were starting a commercial music degree. And I had always been interested in that. I played in the commercial, when I didn't make a traditional live band at UNT, I actually moved to play in the commercial jazz ensemble there. So I had actually done that for 3 semesters at UNT. And so I was always interested in it. I always thought it was really, really important to learn how to record myself and how to, maybe learn some basics about like mixing, mastering, like also songwriting, and also of course the music business and music industry. So which you know, of course, I again, like, I have nothing but great things to say about UNT, but the jazz program there includes little to no music business, and you know, and that's very typical at a lot of these schools too. So it's like I really felt like I wasn't, and especially with COVID also, like I felt like I really had only been at UNT for like 3 years and I really felt like I was not ready to move on quite yet. So I started looking into like how it would be possible for me to go for a 5th year. My job with admissions came with a scholarship. So that was what allowed me to keep my in-state for my 5th year. I ended up pursuing this commercial music degree, which was an 18 credit minor. And I had already completed some of those just from going through some elective courses, and then of course the commercial jazz ensemble at UNT. So I really had about like 12 or 15 credits that I had in 2 semesters. And I was like, this is great. Like, this is super doable. So there was a huge emphasis in that degree in songwriting, as well as digital audio workstations, as well as like music business. So my fall semester, I took a songwriting course, and this was last fall, so 2022. And I took a songwriting course, and it was by Rosanna Eckert, who, if you don't know who that is, but she's an amazing vocalist, Grammy Award winning, like, and songwriter and everything. But she helped me essentially flesh out Finally. That was actually the very first song that I had written and the very first song that I brought to class. So I had that melody in my brain for a really long time, and I just needed to put it on paper and kind of flesh it out. So it went through a couple different things. It was what it was when it was due, and then like throughout the semester it kind of changed a little bit. But that was like what really got me interested in songwriting, and also like helped me just develop like as a songwriter too, because I didn't have any prior guidance in, and especially since that style of music isn't your traditional jazz style. I had my professors teaching me about typical jazz arranging or typical like jazz tunes, but she was into both like commercial and other stuff. So so that's what really got me interested and got me to actually like put it down on paper and flesh it out and all that stuff. And I decided that as for my like senior capstone, because we had a capstone for jazz, which was a recital, and I was like, well, I need to do a capstone for my minor too. So I decided that I was going to record and release this song. And originally it was going to be, 3 or 4 songs, but I quickly realized that that was like a lot. And so the point of it was that I not only wrote it and recorded it, I also mixed and mastered and produced it. So I recorded that song early this year, and then took it to my lessons teacher, who was actually basically my production lessons teacher. I was taking lessons with Jeffrey Hepker, and we used that song to learn about production and learn how to produce, and then he, of course, mix and master and all that stuff. So we took it to the studio. Then I got the files from the recording engineer, mixed, mastered, produced it. And that was kind of the journey with that, which was a lot, it was a lot of work, and something that I'm really proud of, because I had pretty much no prior mixing, mastering, producing experience. So I was very grateful that he helped me with all of that stuff. But yeah, so it was kind of a lot of moving parts, like my songwriting class, and then this production, and then of course my music business professor, who was telling me all about the marketing, and then distribution and like all that stuff, which I had zero idea about, of course. So I had to learn all that stuff. I registered with ASCAP, like I did, all that stuff that is included with that. So it was very involved, and I'm glad it that I got to do it, and I'm glad I didn't pursue 3 or 4 songs because that would have been way, way, way too much. But it ended up being a huge learning experience for me, as well as I got a product that I'm very proud of, and yeah, yeah.
That's incredible that you did all the jobs for that. And do you foresee yourself like when after the single is out right now, but maybe pursuing an EP or an album, do you foresee yourself doing all the jobs, or because you have all this knowledge now, you know what to look for and having someone
Yeah.
else do it?
I think it's gonna be both. I don't consider myself like a master mixer or master producer. Like I'm still very new. And when we were working, he was mentoring me, like, and of course, I have everything that we did, and I know all of that. But that's actually interesting that you're asking about that, because I have another song that is like, I would say like 80% done, but I'm kind of running into some mixing and producing, I don't want to say issues, but things that I think are kind of outside of what I'm capable of doing. So I'm looking for someone currently to help me kind of finish and wrap up that song, because it's mostly done, but it's just not exactly how I want it. So yes, I am planning on releasing that as soon as I'm able, and yeah, and I would love to do some album or EP, in the future, but for now it's just these 2 songs, and I'm hoping to write more and stuff later. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah. So, and there's many ways to approach this. Way back, it was you had to put an album out, and it had to be X number of songs in that album, that kind of thing. But that changed, in the 2000s and more like the 2010s, really, where people were starting to do EPs. But now people are putting out singles, because financially it makes more sense, and you could promote that. You could promote that more and really, ride that song for as long as it needs to do. So your song is on your website, which is
carlystock.com.
okay, great, and it's also on Spotify, right? And you're on, I guess, all the streaming platforms. And are you on Amazon, that kind of thing?
I believe so. Yes. I went through DistroKid, so they have like 26 platforms, I think, something like that. Plus 26 plus. So pretty much everywhere that you're gonna stream, I believe, YouTube, all that stuff. Yeah.
And yeah, and that's the other thing too. I'm still I'm still a little old school. I like to get physical CDs. But I totally understand this too. A lot of people are, putting out songs basically for the streaming services for the most part. Or do you foresee yourself creating physical CDs?
Not for this release, just because it is just the one single. If in 6 months, if I'm seeing, top, this is the new like biggest hit, like I might change my mind, but I just think that that's not an expense and a route that I want to take right now, just because it definitely for like an album or even an EP, like I would be interested in doing something like that. I love CDs. They're like my favorite, like out of like vinyl CD, like all this, like I love CDs. I have whole pile of them in my car and everything. So I know people still use them too. So I would be open to it, just not for this release, I don't think. So
Do you where okay, so you have it on streaming platforms. How would you, and this is, I guess, still a valid question, although there's so many different styles of music or, variations. How do you characterize finally? Like, is it it's jazz because it's improvised music, but like how would you categorize it?
yeah, that's a question I spent a lot of time thinking about.
Yeah.
It is definitely the what I've kind of come to like call it is a modern jazz ballad, is kind of what I characterize it as. It is very heavily improvised. There's of course the song, the head, if we'll call it a head, and then at the end it goes to a reprise of that head, and kind of an ending, but it's not really a typical like form for a jazz song. It's has the solo sections are unique changes, and they actually move time signatures to the pianos in 3/4, altos in 4/4. So it's a lot of intricate like pieces, I guess. But it is jazz and it is a ballad for the most part, the melody itself. And I would call it like, yeah, it's modern, and I don't want to say commercial necessarily, but it's a not a traditional jazz ballad. Yeah.
Awesome. And the second single that you're 80% done with, like what's the vibe on that? Is it's
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's actually kind of, I don't want to say the opposite, but a very different vibe. It's very much like just a fun, kind of funky, like very horn kind of heavy. I got a trumpet and a trombone player on it. I also have a rapper on it. So it's very like kind of the further away from the sensitive like kind of jazz ballad that finally was. So yeah, so it's different, and that's why I think it's also a little bit more out of my wheelhouse, because I'm having to like, I'm finding myself mixing vocals and like doing levels for a lot more instruments than just a quartet. So it's a challenge. It's definitely more challenging for me. So yeah.
But from what I've gathered, in our short time together, you're always willing to learn, and you're always willing to expand your knowledge and to, take advantage of situations, so that you could better yourself. I think that's really, really awesome. What do you foresee for yourself within the next year, the next 3 years?
Yeah. So obviously, my commitment with Fat Cat Swinger is huge, and I'm very happy to be doing all of that stuff. I mentioned a tour. They do Disneyland, so I'll be very involved with that. And my personal projects, I had a big band called the Carly Stock Big Band in Texas at UNT, and we performed around Denton for over a year. Yeah, over a year. We had several shows, and I think I mentioned earlier, like big band is like has a special place in my heart. I love playing lead alto, and when I kind of rose through UNT, I kind of was a lead player, and then come like later, like to the once I got to like the 3, the 2, the 1 o'clock, I found myself playing second alto, and I was bummed about it to be to say the least. I was a little bummed about it. So I told my Professor Lely, and I said, I'm not getting to play lead, and I know that's obviously where I place, and I understand that, but I just need to be playing lead. Like I don't know how to combat this. And he was like, why don't you just start your own big band? And I was like, that's kind of a lot of work. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I have time for that right now. And then he was like, Carly, your assignment by next week is to have gone and booked yourself a show. And I didn't have a band. I didn't have music. I didn't have anything. And he was like, you need to tell me where you're booked, like by next week. And so essentially I got a date, and then had to get all the other stuff together after that. So I got the musicians, I got the books, I ordered really, and granted, I had been thinking about doing this, so I had set some money aside, but the first thing I did was buy really nice books for us. So I have really nice Carly Talk Big Band books, and then I was just getting music from my friends. I was like, who has music? Like, what do we have? Like, just talking to everybody, and we got, I think we had like 14 tunes for our first gig. It was like a 2-hour set, something like that. We kind of filled in with some combos and things, to kind of stretch a little bit. But yeah, so after the first show, it just kept going, and so I would love to start that up again in LA. There's a few hurdles with that, mainly being a rehearsal space, and my friends are really spread out too. So it's not as convenient for sure. But that's a huge goal of mine to get that back up and running. And I mean, in the next 3 years, like I hope for that. That's kind of what I hope for as well. And just being gigging, I'm trying to explore like getting my own kind of combo together as well. I don't want to like say anything like this is what I'm doing, but I've been thinking for a while that I might want to do like a Roy Hargrove tribute band.
Oh,
So yeah, so and that doesn't exist around here. So I would be very much interested in that. So some stuff that I'm thinking of. I'm obviously occupied with kind of the tour and getting all my stuff together for that kind of through into October. So that's gonna have to wait a second. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
that's awesome. And I'm wondering, with the music that you're writing, will there be opportunities? I'm not sure if this would be a fit, obviously not for a Roy Hargrove tribute band and stuff like
Mhm.
that, but the songs that you're writing, being able to play them live and stuff like that, is that something that you
Yeah.
think you're able to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. So, well, actually, I'm gonna backtrack. Finally, we have been playing live. I played it at my senior recital. I actually played it at the last Carly's Talk Big Band gig. Like, I've been playing it as much as I can, live. This new song is very. I think I mentioned like it's just a lot more instruments. There's some actual like electronic instruments from Logic as well. So I'm don't think that this one is as suited for live performance. Maybe I'm wrong, but, but we'll find out. But I just don't think it is. So I'm not as interested in that. But as I write more music and more, whatever guise it is, whether it's a quartet, whether it's something more involved, whether it's a big band chart, I really want to get into writing some big band charts for my big band. That's just something that I need to study more and kind of get more involved with. But yeah, that's I that is the goal essentially. Like whatever music I have in whatever format, like obviously I would love to be playing it. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So now, listen, first of all, I want to thank you for your time. But before we go, so we know about your website, right? carlystock.com. Um, you're on socials, obviously, right? So Instagram, Facebook.
Yes. I'm on both Instagram and Facebook. Instagram is Carly S Stock. S is for Sophia. That's my middle name. So Carly S Stock. And then Facebook should just be my name. And I think I'm holding a saxophone in my profile picture. So you'll know that it's me.
Okay, cool. All right. And let's see, we've got your socials, we've got all this stuff. I think, this is awesome. Oh yeah. What about the website for Fat Cat Swingers?
Oh yeah. So their website is Fat Cat Swinger, no S at the end. It's fatcatswinger.com, I believe.
Got it.
Um, and yeah, so that should be that.
We'll definitely put these links in the show notes for this episode. Listen, Carly, this was awesome. This is a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here and to chat with you and all that stuff. So yeah.